Praise the Lord, everyone. Whew, that's loud. I'm a nervous wreck up here. This is a weighty message for me this morning, so I pray God uses the words as He has spoken to me to minister to someone here today. One of my favorite movies that I can watch over and over again would be The Hunt for Red October, which stars Sean Connery as a famous Captain Ramius, who's chosen to take Russia's latest nuclear submarine, the Red October, on its maiden voyage. We find out Captain Ramius has handpicked much of the crew, which allows him to choose men to go along with his plan not to launch missiles against the U.S. and start another war, but to instead defect and hand the submarine Red October over to the American Navy. So much of the movie is cat and mouse game of trying to avoid being sunk by both the Russians and the Americans, and still manage to, in the end, hand the sub over to the Americans. How the Russian fleet found out about Ramius' plan to defect is revealed in my favorite scene in the movie. Seated at dinner with his hand-picked crew, Ramius reveals that before they set sail, he dispatched a letter to the Russian admiral announcing his plan to defect, which on the surface is nuts. Now the crew goes into panic mode, fearing their own Russian Navy will hunt them down and kill them. But when asked why he had to reveal his plan to defect to the fleet, Captain Ramius refers to the title of my message. I can do a fair impersonation of Sean Connery, but I can't hold a candle to what you do, so I'll just recite his line, okay? I won't try and imitate that. Captain Ramius stated, when he reached the New World, Cortez burned his ships, and as a result, his men were well motivated. Burn the ships. A well-known phrase that refers to when Hernan Cortez reached the New World, which is now Mexico, in 1519. Now, most historians believe Cortez actually scuttled or sank his ships and did not burn them. But either way, Cortez's concern for possible mutiny or his men having a choice to turn back due to fear was nullified when the ships were destroyed. No turning back. Or as one account I read stated, conquer or die. Burn the ships. It's a phrase, it's a belief, it's an action, a response that any of us here could have or may have already applied in our lives due to a specific situation, a habit, a short or long-term relationship. Hindsight's always 20/20, right? It's easy at my age to look back 20, 30, 40 years and see how naive I was to many things. Many times spending too much of my life living in the moment and in the world not making wise decisions and not recognizing the long-term effects of decisions and lifestyle. One of those periods in my life was in the late 90s, before I started coming to abundant life. In 97, I had the opportunity to join a pit crew for a championship-winning race team based out of Milwaukee. The team had won the national championship the year before, and they raced all over the country, and I had a chance to join that team. I grew up going to tons of races with my parents, so I knew a fair amount of racing and realized what a chance this would be to actually be a part of a winning team, working in the pits in the shop, instead of just sitting in the grandstands and being a spectator. It was even thrilling for my wife at the time and for my family, who could come to a few of the races in Wisconsin and on the weekends, and they could actually get to see me in the pits on TV, or even if we won and we were in victory lane, because the races were all televised. But while I was so focused on the rush, the excitement, and the fun, I didn't realize during the first year how this might affect my marriage. We had no children yet, so it was easier to keep the secondary hobby life going on the weekends and Wednesday nights at the shop. I was spending much of what should have been vacation time with my wife, instead leaving on Thursday or Friday, gone all weekend, turning around and getting home either early Sunday morning or late Sunday nights, sometimes just in time to turn around, take a shower, and go to work on Monday after traveling up to 20 hours with the crew. I started to see some things happening in my home, starting to realize the negative impact of time gone that it may be having on it, but it wasn't sinking in yet. Even during my last year on the team in '99, we were already attending Abundant Life. And I'm starting to establish my own relationship with Jesus. But I still had committed one more year to the team, and I had to commit and follow through with it. So I was 1 foot in and 1 foot out. At home, I was seeing things that were not healthy or edifying to our marriage, but I chose not to burn the ship when I should have and walk away from the weekend life that I had been enjoying the past few years. I was having too much fun, enjoying the competition, kind of but not kind of comprehending what was going on and spiraling downward at home. The Bible mentions the pleasure of sin for a season. Proverbs 26 says, "As a dog returns to his vomit, so a fool returns to his folly." It's pretty blunt language, but looking back on it, on that time for me, that's what I was doing. It was selfish on my part. It's easy to look back on these situations, periods of my life, where I should have simply sought counsel through prayer and His Word, especially after being in the church already. Being directed to torch down ships that were leading me in the wrong direction, instead of learning the hard way and dealing with regret and second guessing. I can't stand here and say whether or not my decision to not burn that weekend lifestyle ship at the time directly contributed to what would become major drug and alcohol issues later on in the home. I do know it certainly didn't help the situation any. It was pretty easy for me to see the effects of alcohol. It was easy for me to burn that ship and pour an entire cabinet of liquor down the drain one evening. But what was easy for me may not be easy for others. I also cannot stand here and claim to know what it's like to be an alcoholic or to be addicted to drugs. But I have unfortunately seen firsthand how it can destroy not only a marriage, but life itself. When I got married in '95, I had no future plans for it to end in divorce. But ultimately, with professional counseling, which helped a lot, proper guidance and much needed support within the church, I had no choice but to burn that ship and walk away from the marriage. Luke Smallbone from the Christian music group King and Country has shared his burn the ships moment related to his wife's struggles with addiction to prescription meds she was taking. So this story hits home for me. She became addicted to meds during morning sickness and nausea with her second pregnancy. Fortunately, she finally bottomed out and recognized what was happening. She called her husband while he was actually on the road touring, admitted she could not stop taking the pills, and told him to please come home. She went through a lot of mental health therapy, which was helping but not enough. And she finally got to a point of flushing all the pills down the toilet. Luke's wife said, "Those pills represent so much guilt and shame in my life. I don't want to be consumed with my past anymore, but want to move on to a new day." And when she flushed the pills, that's where Luke got his analogy of burning the ships. And that topic became a very powerful and well-known song and album title for King and Country, a direct result of his wife's battle and victory overcoming her addiction. Let me tell you, guilt, shame, and condemnation are very real. And I've experienced way more than I'd care to share. A huge part due to burning the ship through a difficult divorce, especially while in the church. And to this day, dealing with the consequences of a son being caught in the middle of a messy childhood and divorce. And the result is a very strained, basically non-existent relationship to this day. But regarding the strained relationship, I try my best with God's help to apply what Pastor Kylie instilled in me during a very rough stretch years ago. This may seem like no big deal or minor, but it's a huge deal to me. He taught me to care, but don't carry someone else's burden for them. Carrying someone else's burdens, no matter how close to you, will eventually crush you under the weight. Lay them at the altar, place them in God's hands. I still struggle sometimes between asking God what I want to see happen in his life, but then ultimately speaking faith and saying, your will be done in his life. The other key point Pastor Kylie encouraged me to do, and this is the second part of my title, is don't burn the bridge with my son. Now, some of you may say, burn the ships, burn the bridge, what's the difference? To me, and how I apply those things in my life, there's a big difference. To me, burning a ship is situational. Cut the ties, don't look back, no option to turn around. And I just scribbled in here this morning now, the ship is the vehicle that you traveled in, destroy it, and there's no turning back. But a bridge to me is my pathway. My connection, my relationship where I still hold on to hope and faith. That God is still on the throne, that his timing is perfect, that he has a plan that I cannot see, and that he will bring restoration and healing in that situation. I hope this makes sense to everyone. At least it does for me. That's what I wrote down and thought. The bridge will not be burned, and it won't be burned by me. With God's help, I will always keep that pathway clear and open, knowing someday there will be restoration between a father and a son. As I said, God is still and always will be on the throne, and he allows everything, and I mean everything, that happens in my life, good and bad. Fast forward now so many years, and Missy and I just celebrated our 15th anniversary last weekend, and I am so thankful and so blessed to have her at my side. God is faithful, even in all his timing. I really struggled with this topic the past few weeks, getting my thoughts on paper for this message. And Missy, I'm sure, will amen that. It pulled up a lot of not so pleasant memories in my past and even things I'm dealing with to this day. I don't know if this message made sense to anyone, but I pray that if one person here can relate or be encouraged by what has been shared, then God's will be done. So if I can encourage someone, anyone today, if you see or recognize a situation going bad, you're getting pulled into, and you see it may not end well, don't delay like I did in past situations years ago. Hold off seeking guidance, prayer, and counsel, because there may be a ship that needs to be burned in that situation. And if you have a strained, difficult relationship, whether friend, coworker, family, child, that you may want to see healed or restored, I encourage you, don't burn that bridge. The other person may not want anything to do with you or may feel hurt by past experiences. But keep the bridge open. Keep praying. Put it in God's hands and let Him restore and heal in His time. Thank you.